The crash of shattering porcelain echoed through the sunny lunchtime cafe like a lightning strike, freezing every fork mid-air. In that instant, 21-year-old Maren Kessler felt her soul drop straight through the tiles as the wealthy businessman at table 6 rose from his seat, the ruined plate of truffle risotto dripping down his $1,000 suit. His jaw tightened, his cheeks burned red, and before anyone could speak, he reached forward, gripped the collar of Maren's uniform, and tore the top seam with a violence that sucked the breath from the room. Customers gasped. A child whimpered. Maren's hands trembled against her apron as humiliation crashed over her in waves. She whispered an apology, but the man, Jarrett Thornwell, the kind of multi-millionaire whose shadow people stepped out of instinctively, leaned in with cold fury. And that was the moment a single dad named Corin Vance stepped forward, placing himself between them with a calm that felt like a gathering storm. That if you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kind Heart Stories. It truly helps us spread more light in the world. The cafe, bright with midday sun streaking across wooden tables, seemed to pulse with tension as Corin positioned himself protectively in front of Maren. He wasn't tall in the intimidating sense nor dressed in anything finer than work boots and a faded button-down, but something about him made even the angered businessman blink. Corin's son, 10-year-old Oren, stood behind him with a paper bag from the pastry counter, staring wide-eyed at the scene. Corin didn't raise his voice. He didn't posture. He simply stood his ground with a presence carved from quiet resilience, the kind people only got from living through storms they never bragged about. But this is not where the story starts. To understand why this single moment mattered so deeply, you have to go back to the beginning of Maren's morning, the soft sunrise, the scent of baking bread, and the private hell she carried behind her smile. Maren Kessler had been working double shifts at the Sundrop Cafe for months, juggling unpaid medical bills from her mother's stroke, tuition she'd placed on pause, and the crushing worry of losing the tiny apartment she and her mother shared. Every day, she reminded herself to breathe, to be grateful, to push through the exhaustion that gnawed at her bones. She tied her hair back tightly, smoothed her navy blue uniform, and practiced her customer service smile, one she could summon even when her chest felt full of cracked glass. The cafe was her safe haven, a place where warmth and sunlight softened the edges of her hardship. People knew her, joked with her, appreciated her. But that illusion shattered the moment Jarrett Thornwell walked in. Jarrett was known in town, a high-powered investor visiting for a development project that threatened to buy out several small local businesses, including the Sundrop Cafe. His arrival had sent whispers through the staff all morning. He carried himself like someone who believed the world was clay beneath his hands, shaped for his benefit alone. When he sat at table 6, Maren had forced a friendly smile, trying not to tremble under the intensity of his sharp, scanning gaze. She took his order, double-checked every detail, and repeated it back to him to ensure accuracy. But when the meal came out, a miscommunication in the kitchen turned truffle risotto into mushroom pilaf. A simple mistake. A fixable one. Except Jarrett Thornwell wasn't the type to tolerate imperfection. When the plate fell from her shaking hands during her apology, slipping from exhausted fingers, everything spiraled, and that's when Corin Vance, who had come in only to pick up Oren's favorite almond croissant, could no longer remain a quiet observer. Corin was a man built by hardship, not privilege. After losing his wife 3 years prior, he'd worked endlessly as a mechanic, raising Oren alone while carrying grief with the kind of dignity you'd only notice if you really looked. He taught his son that strength was measured not by dominance but by decency, that real power was the ability to help, not hurt. So when he saw Jarrett rip the collar of Maren's uniform and disgrace her in front of a room full of witnesses, he felt something inside him ignite, the part of him that knew what it meant to be crushed when you were already trying your best to stay standing. Corin spoke calmly, but each word struck with the weight of truth. He told Jarrett that no one deserved to be humiliated for a simple mistake. That anger didn't justify cruelty. That tearing a young woman's uniform wasn't power, it was weakness. The cafe had gone silent, a collective breath held tight. Even Maren, trembling behind Corin, felt something unfamiliar rise in her chest. Protection, safety, the strange warmth of being defended when she expected to be abandoned. Jarrett scoffed, tried to brush off Corin's presence, but Corin didn't move. Customers began to murmur. Some pulled out their phones. Jarrett noticed, and the flicker of public scrutiny made him step back. He muttered something about incompetent staff, about being late for a meeting, then stormed out, leaving tension and torn fabric in his wake. When the door slammed behind him, Maren collapsed into a chair, her breath breaking. She hadn't cried in front of strangers since she was a child, but now tears streamed freely. Corin knelt beside her, speaking softly. He didn't say it was okay, because it wasn't. He didn't say she shouldn't cry, because she needed to. He simply stayed with her until her breathing steadied enough to speak. She thanked him over and over, apologizing for being a burden, for making a scene, for causing trouble, because that's what people do when they're used to being blamed for things that aren't their fault. Corin gently corrected her. She had done nothing wrong. The shame wasn't hers to carry. The cafe owner, Romina, brought her a spare uniform top and told her to take a break. Customers approached offering kind words, but it was Oren the small, timid, hopeful, who placed the almond croissant on Marin's table and told her, "Dad says when someone hurts you, you don't have to believe them." From that moment, something quiet and profound began to shift in Marin's life. She wasn't used to kindness from strangers, especially not kindness that came without expectations or hidden strings. Corin didn't linger for admiration or attention. He simply made sure she was steady, then prepared to leave. But Romina, recognizing an honest man when she saw one, insisted on giving Corin a cup of coffee on the house. And so he stayed a few more minutes, enough for conversation to bloom between him and Marin, not flirtatious or forced, just two tired souls sharing the kind of gentle honesty that made the air feel softer. As days passed, Jarrett's behavior spread across social media, because several customers had posted about the incident. People defended Marin fiercely. But the sudden attention came with its own storms: online debates, rude messages, curious strangers staring when she worked. Romina insisted she take days off, but Marin fought to keep her shifts. She needed the money, and she refused to let humiliation drive her away from the one stable thing she had. On the fourth day after the incident, Corin and Oren returned to the cafe. Not to be heroes, not to be noticed, but just because it was their routine spot. When Marin saw them, her chest tightened with gratitude she didn't know how to express. Over the next weeks, Corin occasionally checked on her, not in a hovering way, but with the gentle care of someone who understood that healing doesn't happen all at once. Sometimes he'd come in silently, simply leaving her a small handwritten note that said things like, "You're doing your best, and your best matters," or "The world needs soft hearts like yours." Oren brought drawings: Marin as a superhero, Marin at a cash register with sparkles around her, Marin with a cape protecting a cartoon city. Those drawings stayed in Marin's locker, but the story didn't stop with kindness. Life rarely lets people heal without testing them. One afternoon, Jarrett returned. He wasn't angry this time, he was smug. He informed Romina that his company had officially placed an offer to buy out the entire block, including the Sundrop Cafe, and the demolition would begin within months. Romina was devastated. Tears welled in her eyes. She had built this cafe from nothing, pouring her memories, savings, and heart into the place. Marin felt her stomach twist. Losing this job would break her. Losing this safe place would break everyone. Corin, who had arrived to pick up pastries, listened quietly. Then, with the same calm steadiness he'd shown that first day, he asked Romina how much she still owed on the cafe. She told him the number, her voice trembling with shame. Corin didn't flinch. It turned out that while Corin lived modestly, he had been carefully saving for years, not for luxury, but for stability. He didn't have millions, but he had enough to help keep the cafe from being swallowed whole. He offered not to buy it, but to partner with Romina, helping her secure the remaining loan, ensuring the business stayed hers, not his. Jarrett mocked the idea at first. But when Romina agreed and the paperwork followed in the days after, Jarrett's offer was effectively blocked. The Sundrop Cafe survived. Marin watched it all unfold with awe, realizing that Corin didn't just stand up to cruelty, he stood up for people. Not once for glory, not once for reward, but simply because he believed in doing right. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. And slowly, a connection formed between Marin and the single dad who had changed her life. Not an explosive romance, not a fairy tale leap, but something real and gentle, two people learning to trust again. "Ma,"